Hello everyone. Today we're going to be talking about definite and indefinite articles, or los artículos in Spanish. So first off, in English we have two types of articles, definite and indefinite, and this is the same case in Spanish. In English we have one definite article, which is the. For example, the man, the men, the woman. But in Spanish there are four forms of the, or four definite articles. So they are el, los, la, and las. So as you can see here, there are four different types of definite and indefinite, or definite articles. For our indefinite articles, this is when you're talking about something less specific. So for definite articles, it's something specific like the car or the man. But with indefinite articles, you're talking about something a little less specific, like a man. I don't know which man it is, it's just a man. Or some men or some women. So in English, we say a or some, but in Spanish, they say for a, un or una, and then unos or unas. And you might wonder, why are there four different versions? That's because in Spanish, the article, or the el, la, un, una, or etc., the, or some, the article always has to match in gender and number with the noun it precedes. So in this case, I have these four different types because I can have masculine and feminine nouns, and I can also have singular and plural nouns, so el or los, for example. So let's look at our chart so we can see all the different types in one big place. So first we have our masculine articles. So for the definite articles, I'm talking about a specific thing. So I can see my nouns here. I have hombre, so I want to say the man. The singular masculine version is going to be el. So I put el hombre in front. For hombres, now it's going to be plural. So I'm going to say los hombres. Over here, I'm looking at an indefinite article. This is when I'm talking about less specifically. To say a man, I'm going to use un hombre. This is my masculine singular indefinite article. For hombres, I'm going to say unos hombres. Okay? Now let's do the feminine. So for feminine singular, to say the woman for the definite article, I'm going to say la mujer, the woman. For the plural, it's going to be las mujeres. Notice there's an S on the end of both, and we'll talk more about that in a second. For my indefinite articles, talking about a woman, I'm going to say una mujer. Then for the plural, it's going to be unas mujeres. So I have el, un, los, unos, la, una, las, or unas. And there's this many types because they all have to agree with the nouns. And you might wonder, how do I know which one to use? How do I know if it's going to be el hombre or la hombre? How do I know that? So most of the time you just have to memorize it, but there are some little tricks that you can use. And this is one of them, so this is one of our little tricks. It doesn't work all the time, and we're going to actually see an exception to that in just a second. But usually if words end in D, ion, Z, or A, they're usually feminine. So they'll use my la, las, una, or unas. They'll use this section of my chart because they're all feminine. And then usually words that end in L, O, N, E, R are going to be masculine. So they're going to be using the definite articles of el or los, or the indefinite articles of un or unos. However, this isn't always the case, and in fact, you can see one right here. Mujer ends in an R, but it's la mujer, so that's an exception to my loner rule. So you have to be very careful with this rule. It's not necessarily a rule. It's more like guidelines. So let's try some practice. We're going to look over here. Okay, so try and do these if you can. The first one I have is the friend. So the friend, I know, is going to be amigo. It's male, so it ends in an O, amigo. In this case, it's the friend, el amigo. So notice I use the, my definite article, and it's masculine, so it's el amigo. For a female friend, I'm going to use amiga. And in this case, it ends in an A, amiga, and it's going to be singular, but it's still my definite article, the. So I'm going to say la amiga. Now, I notice that I have friends. There's a group of people. So in this case, it's going to be plural. So I might wonder, how do I make this, amigo or amiga, plural? So we're actually going to skip to the back. So here we are in the back. So how do you make nouns plural? So if a noun ends in a vowel, for example, like migo, all I have to do is add an S on the end. So not too crazy. For example, hombres. On the front, the way this works is for the friends, I know that it's going to be a group of males and females. In Spanish, if I have a group that includes both boys and girls, it automatically becomes a masculine word, just like ellos includes groups of boys and girls. So I'm going to say amigos, ends in os because it's going to be masculine even though there's a group of both. Then I need to think, which one of my definite articles do I need? If I'm making something plural, the noun, I also have to make my definite article plural. So I can no longer say el amigos. I have to change it to the plural form, which is going to be los amigos, the friends. My next ones, you'll notice that these three are indefinite articles. So for these ones, I'm going to be using this side of my chart. First, I have amigo again, but it's going to be a friend who's a male. I need to look here. It's going to be un because it's masculine and it's singular. For a female friend, amiga, I'm going to be using a friend, my feminine form, which is una, amiga. And then some friends, this same thing, I normally would say, oh, is it males or females? In this case, I know that it's all female. It's plural because it's friends. So I'm going to be using amigas. It's all females. It's all feminine. So what is my feminine plural version of my indefinite article, some? It's going to be unas amigas. Notice how these agree. Unas, amigas. It agrees in gender. It's both feminine and it agrees in number. They're both plural. Okay? So, before I move on, I'm actually going to skip back to the back. Whee! So, on the back, we talked about making nouns plural. So we saw amigos. You add an S on the end. There are some nouns that don't end in a vowel. So they don't end in an E, A, E, I, O, U, etc. So in this case, I usually add an ES onto the end. So for example, if I had, let's see, mujer. Okay, la mujer is going to change to mujeres. And just like we talked about in the front, if I have my la, it's going to change to my plural form of the definite article, las. And my singular form is going to change to the plural form. So el becomes los. So it's going to be las mujeres. La mujer becomes las mujeres. Just a side note, this is just in case. Some words also change spelling when you make them plural, like lápiz, especially if it ends in a Z. So in this case, el lápiz, I still change el to los, but lápiz, the Z is actually going to change to a C because otherwise it sounds funny. So my Z changes to a CES. This is just a side note when we start doing more nouns because this is going to become more important. But the main thing here is if your vowel ends in, or your noun, ends in a consonant, you're going to add an ES. Otherwise, you just add an S if it ends in a vowel. So let's go back to the front because we're going to need that information to do this bottom section. So we have, the first one is the girls. So in Spanish, I know chica is girl. I need to make that plural. Chicas. Okay, now I need to figure out, it's my definite articles that I'm looking at here. So it's going to be the girls. So if I look up here, my feminine plural form is las chicas, the girls. Las chicas, they agree. The man, it's actually our example at the top. Hombre, and it's going to be el hombre. Be careful here, this is plural. The men, I have to change my el to los because I'm making it plural. Hombre ends in a vowel, so I'm just going to add my S on the end. The sodas. In this case, I know it's refresco. I also know in the singular form it's el refresco, but this time I have more than one soda. So first off, I'm going to add my S because it ends in a vowel. Then I'm going to change my el to los refrescos, the sodas. The cookie. I know it's galleta, and if I think about it, it's feminine. It does end in an A. And it's going to be la galleta, the cookie. See? Okay, so hopefully you did pretty well in that section. Let's go to the back. Okay, so now I'm looking at my indefinite articles. So first off, I have a pizza. I know it's la pizza, but in this case I want to say a pizza. So I'm going to change it from la to una. Some fruits. I know fruit is feminine. I want to make it plural, so I added my S on the end because it ends in a vowel. I have to change my la to una, but then I also have to change it to plural here. So it's going to be, my feminine plural version is unas frutas. Notice I have my agreement there. It agrees in gender and number. It's both feminine and plural. For a boy, this should be pretty easy. It's un chico. My masculine form is un for a boy. We're going to skip these two just for now. Actually, even this one. We're going to skip these just for now. We're actually going to go down here to number 12, number 13, and number 14. So number 12, the pizzas. For the pizzas, it's a definite article in the example, but I'm going to cross that out because this is supposed to be my indefinite articles, and it was just a typo. So it's going to be instead some pizzas. So I need to think, okay, up here I had una pizza, so technically it's the same thing, but I'm making it plural. So I think pizzas, it ends in a vowel, so I just add an S on the end. And una becomes unas pizzas. One boy. So this is exactly the same as this up here. So you might get a little bit confused and think, why would it be, it's the same thing. Un chico is the same thing as a boy. You can also translate a or un to one boy. It's a little weird, but that's how it is. And finally, some ice cream. So in this case, I have to be careful because some implies that there's more than one of the ice cream. So I know it's helado, okay? And I'm going to need to add an S on the end because it's plural. And I need to think, what is my masculine plural form of my indefinite article? Unos helados, okay? I'm actually going to come back up to these now. So these three include adjectives. So we have funny, old, and tall. I'm describing the people. So in Spanish, luckily, these always go on the end. They always go on the end. They come after the noun. There are a few exceptions, but that's like Spanish AP stuff. We're not there yet. So for a funny boy, first I need to come up with a boy. And then my adjective is going to come at the end. So in this case, I have funny, which is cómico. Just like this other stuff, it needs to agree in gender and number. So un chico cómico. I don't change it. It ends in an O, just like chico. For some old ladies, though, I am going to have to change it. So if I think about it first, I need to think about ladies. It's the same as women, so it's going to be mujer. It's plural, though, so I need to add my ES on the end because it ends in a consonant, ends with the letter R. So I'm going to say mujeres, and it's going to be unas, mujeres, some, feminine and plural. Old is viejo, but in this case, I'm going to add, or I'm going to change it to, I should say, an AS so that it agrees. Unas mujeres viejas. And we're going to be doing more practice with this later. Some tall girls. Once again, girls, I have chicas. It's going to be unas chicas altas. Notice I changed my ending here to match the same gender. Feminine, chicas altas. And it's also plural, ending in an S. Okay? If this is confusing you a little bit with the adjectives, we're going to be practicing that more next week. Okay? But let's look at the bottom. These are a little bit simpler. So on the bottom we have, I'm going to be changing these definite articles to my indefinite articles. So see if you can do this section by yourself. So for example, la persona is going to become una persona. It's still feminine. It's still singular. Then I'm going to change it to my plural, or some people. Unas personas. So see if you can do the rest of them. So how did you do? Notice my genders and numbers agree here. So la pizza becomes una pizza. And then to plural, I notice that there's also an S on the end of both of these. Same thing with un refresco becomes unos refrescos. Un teléfono, unos teléfonos. La galleta becomes una galleta and unas galletas. So this is all the same noun, la persona, una persona, and unas personas. It's just different ways to talk about it. So the person, a person, some people. So keep that in mind. For this section, all you have to do is write the definite article, okay? So for helado, I notice it doesn't have an S on the end, so it's not plural. I'm going to be using masculine, so it's going to be el, helado. Bicicleta, it's feminine, it's singular, la. Galletas, las. Libros, los, because it ends in an S, I know it's going to be plural. It's masculine, os, libros. Profesora is going to be my feminine singular, la. And then cuaderno, el cuaderno. Finally, for the indefinite articles, I'm going to write these down as well. So for persona, it's either going to be un, una, unos, or unas. In this case, it's feminine singular, so I'm going to use una. Chicas, I have unas, because it's feminine and it's plural. Chicas, unas, chicas. Libro is masculine and singular. So I'm going to use un. Fruta, feminine and singular. Amigos, bicicletas, it's going to be unas. Profesoras, also unas, notice, ends in an AS. And finalmente, teléfono, is un teléfono. So